Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of this podcast is political, this newsletter is political, whatever. I'm still trying to figure out the name. I am here in the studio with my father, just like we've been doing for the past 5 weeks, and he actually chose today's topic. So I'm a little hesitant about this one, but do you want to go ahead and tell people what it was?
Yes.
Or what it is?
What it is, yes, what it is. Not past tense, we're recording now. You always say, the reason I chose this topic is ...
Yes.
And so, actually, I chose this topic like the first week we did
Yeah.
this podcast because it was the start of summer. And leading into summer, I saw an article that said parks and recreation departments were having trouble staffing, and specifically lifeguards and, just the day-to-day operations of a park so kids can come and play. And that struck a chord with me. And I know times have changed, and we always say, yeah, back day, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Yet, it matters to a degree. When I was a kid, I could walk to a local swimming pool, City of Dallas Park, walk to it, pay my little 50 cents, and spend the day at the swimming pool. And, I did this summer after summer after summer. One reason I probably have to see a dermatologist every year for a skin exam, because back in the day, we didn't use sunscreen. We didn't use anything, or if we used anything, it was oil. We wanted to be as dark as possible.
Especially you, Dad. You're pretty pale.
I'm pretty pale. But I didn't use sunscreen. I didn't use oil. I just went out there, and by the end of the summer, I was pretty dark. By mid-June, I was pretty red. But I had a great time. I took swimming lessons at the park. I eventually got up to be a junior lifeguard, and if I'd taken one more set of courses, I could have been a lifeguard and had a summer job through middle school and maybe the first part of high school. So when this article came out, this was back in April, I guess, somewhere around there, they were really talking about what it would take for people to go, to the park this year, and specifically swimming pools. There's, recreation centers, and it's a little bit of a different setup nowadays compared to what it was. There's not these local parks. Well, I say that there are, but more or less, it's not local park after local park after local park like it was when I was a child. I named parks not by the name of their neighborhood or anything like that, but by what the prominent, I guess, recreational thing there was at the park, whether it be a swimming pool or there was a park, actually Lockwood Park in Dallas, and there was a bunch of wooden type animals, dragons or dinosaurs, I can't remember, I was pretty young, that you could crawl on and play on. And there was a park in Richardson that had a big old rocket ship you could get up in, and it was 3 or 4 levels. I won't say stories, it's probably only about 5 or 6 feet tall at each level. But, and there's a lot of joy in being a kid and just being able to go and play in the park. And I don't know, I know Victoria grew up, in an era where the nearest park to us really didn't have a lot of, had some more of the modern playground equipment, which is a little different.
No, it didn't. What are you talking about?
It did.
What was it?
The one over there by
Toller Elementary?
Yeah. It had, but again, they don't look like playground equipment. They were just little things you climbed on or did stuff on.
Okay.
And the nearest pool was at a recreation center. It was a wave pool in Garland. And so, we actually had to pack up and drive to it. And we never really took advantage of it that much. We went a couple times. We didn't go that much. And so, when this article came out, I started thinking, what is it, for these kids? And now they're worried about even being able to open. So sometime in June or whenever we first started, we started talking about this. I sent an email, and, us being a nascent podcast, I don't know if I was because I didn't know what I was doing or just people didn't, respond. I sent an email or emails to a variety of cities around the area, Dallas, Fort Worth, and some of our suburbs. I got one response back, and I've been going back and forth with this person. And so let's just give credit. The city of Fort Worth responded, and we appreciate it because they, were very patient with me and what I was asking for, and what I was looking for in doing this. So I do want to talk about it because this talks about the struggles they went through, which was my original purpose. What are these park departments going through so kids can go swimming? I mean, it's 100 degrees in Texas this year. You want to go swimming. And they gave me some more follow-up information. Then after I go over this, I want to go through some of I'll talk about a couple other things too. And this is a park, there's this city called Mansfield, and I'll get to that in a minute. And I was really impressed with what they did. And this has nothing to do with swimming, but it was with their parks department. So the first set of questions, we talked about was, okay, I'm just going to read some of this because I think that's Fort Worth. They're saying they've, just like everybody else, felt the full weight of the national lifeguard shortage. And again, remember, to be a lifeguard, I had to go through swimming lessons one summer and went through a whole slew of swimming lessons. That was fine. That was just something I did. Then the next summer, I took a little bit more advanced swimming because, I was getting older. And I really enjoyed going to the park, the pool all the time. And so it takes about 2 or 3 years of summer swimming lessons, maybe, at least back when I was a child, to do that. So you don't just hop in and apply to be a lifeguard. You have to go through some training. I don't know what the modern training is. But last year they said they started the hiring process earlier, made 2 increases to pay, and added an incentive bonus of $200 for completion of assignment at the end of the pool season.
Oh, wow.
In other words, if you stayed for the whole summer, you got an extra $200, and that was, I started writing her back in June of this year, and she's saying this was last year. And then even with those efforts, their staffing was well under expectations, even with rates that are a premium compared to the major cities in the DFW market, which I guess their wages. They cut down. This breaks my heart. Due to the staffing shortage, we cut the daily operations down from Tuesday to Sunday to Thursday to Sunday. And as a kid, you have Sunday through Saturday off, and there's no school. So, you're being cheated out of, 4 days of not being able to go to the pool, which, like I said, is important to me. But we had a great time as kids. Our whole neighborhood went. And this takes away from building neighborhoods and building communities when kids can't go out and play together, because that's how families meet each other, and that's how families interact with each other. In most cases is when kids get together. And then she goes on to say their aquatic staff, who had been on board since June 16th, had been on board since June 16th, were also given another $1.25 pay raise due to their commitment and service during this nationwide issue. Okay, and then she talks about the staffing shortage prompted a variety of issues, first being the large variety of other opportunities in higher paying positions, whether it be in retail or in the service industry. Oh, okay, yeah. She's talking about how everybody's struggling hiring people here. And yet, they're confident with what they did. They were able to serve the public this summer and have a successful summer, even with the complications that were out of their control. And they're going to, look for new creative solutions going forward. So this was one city that responded to what I was concerned about as a person, to what I enjoyed as a child. And I feel, children nowadays are cheated. There are much more threats to them. Oh my goodness, that's a whole different topic. At a variety of levels than there were when I was a child. I think some of those threats existed, but they were so rare that, we could run around, and everybody talks about it, my generation or maybe people a little bit younger than me, how we used to ride our bikes 10 or 15 miles everywhere during the day. We were out running around, like I said, going to the park by ourselves, swimming all day long by ourselves. I walked, it was probably a 5+ mile walk. We used to walk to the mall as children. And, it didn't matter. It's just what we did. It's a different world. And, you feel cheated you feel for these kids who don't have this craziness that they're able to do. Also, again, because Fort Worth answered me, I'll give them a little kudos here. They talked about their summer day camp program. They said they're back to pre-pandemic numbers. And again, we started going back and forth in June in emails. I got a full-time job, so I would write an email at night, and then I'd come home the next night and see her response. And they served 1,965 children at 22 locations across the city. And they consider this a high demand. And, parents do, and as she says it, parents consider and understand the importance of children being involved in activities. And they do. They need to do something. Kids need to burn energy, and have fun and do things and interact. So they talked about the goals of their program were to provide an affordable, high-quality youth program in a safe and friendly environment, encourage healthy lifestyles by making good choices about physical activity and nutrition. Kids don't care about nutrition. I don't know why parents or people think, but they do need to learn a little bit about, the difference in what they should eat.
Well, I would say allergies. That would probably be something that they need to teach kids. Like, hey, if your friend has this food allergy, make sure not to share it with them.
Well, that would be important too. Hey, you want my peanuts?
Yeah.
No.
Nope.
To appreciate and respect for diverse cultures, to promote educational learning through recreational activities and social interaction. And there's a lot you can learn. Like I said, it's not just learning how to swim. That's one thing. But we also were part of our parks softball team. There was a league of the city parks, and they had a softball team. We'd play. So we learned a lot of other things, too, how to play sports, how to be members of team. Plus, they had a little recreation area where there's a variety of sports we learned and could play. So, you get things when you have people there with your children beyond just saying, go to school from 8 to 3 and, do your homework. They talked, back to homework, they talked about their literacy program that was part of each summer camp. So this is a camp. This is something that each child went to for a specified period of time. And each site had a literacy. Oh boy, can't even talk. There's something there. Support specialist, a teacher who works with children in small groups to improve their reading. And, this is summer, supposed to be playing, but it never hurts. Reading, it should be a year-round enterprise for adults and children. Read Fort Worth with comparing school data. Okay, this is their program, Read Fort Worth. And it will be comparing school data from the end of the school year with data from the upcoming school year. They're looking, they're talking about their programs and what their goals are. So we didn't have this as kids. The flip side of this, these kind of programs, at least in all the little local parks I went to, where they had park staff. There were people there that managed the softball team and managed all the little things you could check out. They had a shed and, of course, managed the pool and some of the other things that went around that. We had to pack up and drive to another park and play their team, and another team would come play us. So it was a lot of fun, but we didn't get all this secondary, I guess it's primary stuff now, in regards to improving the literacy, helping children with the reading, and doing some of these other programs, nutrition. And so, our cultural enrichment, our diversity was you picked up and went to a different park. But it was fun. And they had to hire over 100 part-time seasonal workers to operate these camps. And they talk about the need to change the way they were doing some things. Again, raised the pay, added the incentive bonus program to encourage people to stay through the entire program. They had job fairs, I guess, leading into the summer at college campuses, which is great. College students love working with, little kids. It's always a good interaction because they're more closer to being a big brother than a parent, so there's a little bit more relationship or relativity with these interactions. And so that was, I was real glad that she shared all this, because this is what I was looking for when I said I went out and sent a bunch of emails, and I was really trying to figure out, where are cities in Dallas-Fort Worth on this? So the second part of my research, and this just, okay, let me do Mansfield first.
Here we go.
2 years ago, during the pandemic, first of all, I belong to an organization that we meet in groups, and it's the type of group you meet and you hug people when you come in and have
you say
potlucks.
I love you, and you hug, and you cry, and you drink, and yes, I know exactly what group you're talking about.
Well, the drinking comes after.
No,
we will on occasion go out for dinner afterwards, and yes, we may have a glass of wine. Oh my goodness, this child. Anyway, so when the pandemic came upon us, we had to go to Zoom like the rest of the planet, and it became real hard for people. Everybody was working on Zoom. So no one wanted to do something where we used to have potlucks and interactions and activities to have a meeting on Zoom trying to recreate, that environment that needed interaction, human interaction, on Zoom. Well, it's an organization. It's an international organization. So they have rules, and they had to follow all the pandemic rules. And so they were coming out saying, you can't meet in these groups. You have to do it via Zoom. So we went through the first year and a half, whatever it was. Finally, they started thinking, okay, we're going to try to attempt to get back in person. So I said, I happen to be the better half and I happen to be leaders of one of the small groups. It's an organization, so there's hierarchies. But one of the local
Sounds like
groups.
a cult.
It is. It's a cult. Anyway, so we were trying to figure out how do we do this, because they were saying, it's an organization. They didn't want to get sued. No one wanted to get sued during the pandemic. So they set outlines. And we were looking at these outlines. This still doesn't work. But we were headed into spring. So there was one option. You can meet outdoors. So we wanted to meet. And our group wanted to meet. We weren't seeing anybody in our group because no one was coming via Zoom. It was just like 6 of us that were coming via Zoom for like a year. But everybody was like, yeah, well, we want to come. We just want to wait till, and okay. So one of our members got a hold of the city of Mansfield, and we rented a pavilion and held we held a few events over the first spring that we could. I guess it was a year after the first year, whenever it was. And Mansfield already had their parks set up for Wi-Fi. And you got to give them credit. And then as we were going there, because we went there a few times, I ended up meeting a representative from the Parks Department who was out there checking on some stuff. He was, he was, I guess, just doing an overview of the parks because he had some responsibilities for it. And so he talked to us and gave us pretty much their next 5-year plan. This was a couple years ago, and how much money they were going to spend on building a trail, a interactive trail complex. I don't know a better word for it. And how they were going to, across the city of Mansfield, be able to connect the north to the east side, north to the south side, east to the west side, and went through this whole, and it was pretty phenomenal, plan. They were going to do this, and they had the Wi-Fi in their pavilions. They were building out their parks. They were making a big commitment to parks for the family. They had a huge recreation center where we rented this pavilion. Then you walk down a trail, maybe no more than a quarter mile. You had another series of pavilions. They had already started building this, and they were building it out and building it out. So I got to give a shout out to the people of Mansfield for letting their parks department or their budget people in charge of their budget build out this deal, because there were kids playing. That these parks were full when we were there. We had our pavilion, and we had to rent it. We had to spend some money. But they had multiple pavilions in multiple locations. And because of the Wi-Fi, because we still had to offer Zoom to our groups, vis-a-vis this organization, so people who could come but maybe still hesitant to come in person. So we brought our laptops, hooked them up, and had people there. And I think one time out of 3 or 4 times we went in one of these pavilions, we actually had someone show up on a laptop. But we had to make these offerings. So that was a great adaptation for what was going on in the world and, the modern world in regards to being able to bring families and children to areas where they can play. So that brought another thought into my head. Well, how much money is Mansfield's Parks and Recreation Department's budget compared to its total budget versus what other cities are doing? That opened up a nightmare. I don't want to say anything bad about anything, but
why not? Well,
because people work hard, and
they need to work harder.
If,
iron sharpens iron.
So I went to the city budgets. I went bop. City budget of Dallas, city budget of Fort Worth, city budget of Mansfield. I just started looking at these things, and we as private citizens need to keep track about how our tax dollars are being spent. Have I ever really spent a lot of time doing that myself up until this came up? No. Go click on a city, one they send out, they face forward you from their website. Fort Worth was 560 some odd pages. If you're going to plow through this and figure out how much are you actually spending on parks, it was a nightmare. Dallas, I forget how many hundreds of pages Dallas was. Mansfield was even hundreds of pages. And to actually plow through this information and say, and then it becomes a bigger issue. What are they spending money on and how is all this? And they write, and again, I don't want to, I'm in a big why right now. Why do I need 562 pages of narratives? And I understand they want to talk well about their projects and what they're doing and things like this. And some teams had to spend hours upon hours upon hours creating this 562-page document. Now, I'm sure over time there's a format in there they've built up over time, and they replace last year's with this year's information. So they're not probably starting from scratch each year. But when it was 562 pages, do we really need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages describing the budget? Some of it's flowery, a ton of it is narrative, some of it explains what the terms mean, which that's a valid thing. So it just was a little overwhelming to me. So how does the actual private citizen deal with these budgets? And I got some things, and if you look at it, you'll see general fund, you'll see enterprise fund, you'll see different kinds of funds, and then you have to go back and read what these terms mean so you understand what they're talking about and things like that. But plowing through this stuff, and I'm in Dallas's right now. Dallas includes their park budget in something called quality of life, arts, and culture. So how much they're spending on actual parks, and then you have to break it out, what they're talking about, like new programs, and then I just couldn't find where it landed in the general budget. What's the day-to-day cost to run in a park in Dallas, or the Parks and Recreation Department? But anyway, they have a broader term, quality of life, just arts and culture here, and they again, narrative. They talk about things that are coming up with things to do, what they're adding to the programs, and all this. But to find out, what's the day-to-day of the city parks department? How much are they spending on parks? What are they? And so I didn't get a response back from Dallas on my email request, so I have no idea how to manage all this. But I mean, it's nice. They're doing some nice things. They got a program nurturing Dallas parks. Okay, I talked about Mansfield 2 or 3 years ago, already being Wi-Fi'd in their pavilions and their parks. Okay, this is Dallas upcoming. The city is devoting $3 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding to add Wi-Fi to 63 geographically diverse park locations in high-priority zip codes as one of many efforts to bridge the digital divide. Includes 42 recreation centers, 19 aquatics facilities. Okay, here's Dallas, 3 years behind Mansfield, if you ask me, if not more. I'm not quite sure when Mansfield had put Wi-Fi in theirs. They talk about park security. They're investing in the security of its parks and trails by adding funding for 4 additional city marshals to partner with Park and Recreation in each year of the biennial. They have to produce an annual budget, but they do kind of a biennial review. By the end of 21, 22, they have to have, or they're planning on having 12 city marshals patrol the park to respond to high-risk incidents. Then they have other programs they're doing, but in reading all, I found this part, but I had a hard time trying to figure out what are they actually spending on parks. If you know math, you know a little bit about this kind of stuff. You take what's the amount being spent on it, divide it by the total budget, and you get a percentage of how much is being spent on parks and recreation. I was going to kind of do that, compare city to city to see which cities are spending more as a percentage, not dollar, because different cities have different budgets, and so you just want to get a minute, just a general idea of what they're doing. It was hard to even find where I could find those numbers. And so it was quite interesting trying to plow through this document to get this stuff. But that was one of Dallas's face forward type things. And they have what they call a message from the city manager. And we talked about the city manager, one of the first podcasts we did. He has a 54-page, and sure, he didn't write all this, to the honorable mayor and city council members. And he talks about the budget and what the budget is and things like that. Again, we as private citizens need to know what's going on. But this is an overwhelming amount of information if you just want to get some basic information. I don't normally do this kind of research. There might be ways to get more detailed information, probably by contacting someone at the city. I don't know. So I just was so flabbergasted when I started doing the research. And I don't have a lot of time to research. Victoria and I both have full-time jobs. So we're doing this in our spare time, so to speak. And so when we do research, it's somewhat on the fly. And again, I'd been doing this over a couple months, so I got a little bit more data than I normally would. But then again, trying to read through multiple 100-page documents to try to find something where I could do some basic math. The math is in there. I mean, the dollars are in there. It tells you what it all is. But then you have to break it out. Again, there's general fund, special something kind of fund, enterprise fund. Then they break out. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so the frustration obviously mounts. And one thing I do want to say, and because we want to keep this local, if you are a family, if you have a family and you have kids, I would recommend working with your city park department, find out what's going on, and find out, what is the city committed to you as a family living in that city. I did kind of like the how that Dallas did it with their little title of the what was it, culture, arts, life. I'm trying to find back that title back. Sorry, trying to scroll through stuff. So I think, as a broader concept, that's a great idea. But I really, being a kid, going to the park was a great joy of, my childhood. And I would hope that we would keep that for our children going forward. Someday Vicki may get married and have children, and people of her age, she's in her early 20s, it's a little ways off. But, I do have older children, have children. I mean, and, they go to their little local area. It's real nice for people to be able to do that. And that's something we need to keep our eye on, because I think that's a benefit to who we are as a society. It really helps if our kids are playing together and learning from each other and have a broad spectrum of things to do. Helps keep them out of trouble and helps develop them into responsible, fun-loving, young at heart adults.
Now you see why I don't let him pick out any of the topics. That was quite the diatribe. Let me see. Okay, so parks. I'm going to keep my comments short because I know that we got a lot of, we got a lot of information there. But there is this need to have a location for kids, for families to gather. And if we want to continue if we want to continue to have this democracy where people can freely talk and they can exchange ideas and they can learn about each other and each other's backgrounds, then places like these are needed. I think they're essential for democracy. You talk about the town square, you talk about having conversations, and you talk about meeting new people and realizing that, yes, even though there are different backgrounds, even though there are different opinions, once you see that they're human and you can go to picnics and your children play with each other and you talk about things other than just politics, but instead maybe about the meaning of life, maybe about religion, maybe just even about what your job is and what you do as a person, then these things are essential for the kind of future that we want to sustain, not only in just politics, but also just like the reason why America exists in the first place. So with that note, this is on this day that this is being aired, I'm in Chicago. Not right now, but when this is going to be aired, I'm going to be in Chicago. So I'm going to be exploring all of Chicago's parks, their arts centers, and their restaurants. So this will be my last big vacation hurrah before I book another vacation in maybe about 2 months. So I hope everyone has a wonderful Saturday, and we will talk to you next time.